Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. Buckle up, as it's a long one, and don't forget to listen to the end of the story to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, guys, and please like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. Hey Reddit, this is going to be a long one, so buckle up. I, 32 male, have been holding on to this story for a long time, and I think it's finally time to share it. It's been a roller coaster of emotions and experiences, but I need to know if I'm the a-hole for how I'm handling things now. Let's start from the beginning. I grew up in a small town in what many would call a traditional family. My parents were strict and had very clear expectations for my brother, Ethan, 34 male, and me. From an early age, it was clear that Ethan was the golden child. He was always seen as the smart, charismatic one who could do no wrong. My parents doted on him, constantly praising his achievements, while I was often overlooked or criticized for not being more like Ethan. Despite this, I loved my brother. I looked up to him, even though I sometimes felt like I was living in his shadow. He was the kind of guy everyone liked: teachers, friends, neighbors. I tried my best to get along with him, but it wasn't easy. Ethan would tease me relentlessly, often in ways that hurt deeply. He'd tell me I was stupid, worthless, or that I'd never amount to anything. Whenever I'd bring this up to my parents, they'd brush it off as brotherly teasing and tell me to toughen up. When I was 16, my parents started noticing that money was missing from their wallets and around the house. At first, it was small amounts, $10 here, $20 there, but over time, the amounts grew. They began to suspect that someone in the family was stealing from them. I was clueless about the whole thing, as I had nothing to do with it. But then Ethan started dropping hints, making comments like, I've seen OP acting a bit strange lately, or I wouldn't be surprised if OP was the one taking the money. Eventually, Ethan outright accused me of being the thief. He told my parents that he had seen me sneaking into their room and taking money from their wallets. This was a complete lie, but Ethan was incredibly convincing. He had his way of speaking that made people believe anything he said. My parents, always ready to believe the worst about me and the best about Ethan, took his word for it without question. They didn't even bother to ask me for my side of the story. I still remember the night they confronted me. My father, red-faced with anger, demanded that I admit to stealing from them. My mother was crying, saying she was so disappointed in me. I was shocked and tried to defend myself, telling them I would never do something like that. But Ethan, with his innocent act, kept insisting that he saw me do it. He even produced some evidence, a few bills he claimed he found hidden in my room. I was blindsided. I had no idea how the money got there, but it was clear Ethan had planted it. Still, my parents believed him without hesitation. They said they couldn't trust me anymore and that my actions had crossed the line. They decided the best course of action was to kick me out of the house. I remember my father saying, "We can't have a thief living under our roof." I pleaded with them, trying to explain that I was innocent, but they wouldn't listen. My mother said it was for my own good, that maybe being out on my own would teach me a lesson. I was given a week to pack my things and leave. I was devastated. I had no idea where to go or what to do. I was just a teenager, thrown out on the streets over a lie. I was lucky my best friend's parents took me in. I was scared and alone, unsure of how to survive. I had a part-time job at a local bar. I worked extra shifts and picked up any odd jobs I could find to save up some money. I was determined to prove everyone wrong, to show my parents and Ethan that I wasn't the failure they thought I was. I focused on my education too. I managed to finish high school. Eventually, I earned my GED and saved up enough to enroll in a community college. It wasn't easy. I was balancing 2 or 3 jobs at a time while taking classes, but I was driven by a desire to succeed despite everything. I wanted to prove, if only to myself, that I could make something of my life. Fast forward a few years ago, and I managed to transfer to a 4-year university on a scholarship. It was one of the happiest moments of my life. I was proving to myself, and to everyone who doubted me, that I could achieve something great. I graduated with honors and landed a job in my field right after college. Over the years, I moved up in my career, earning promotions and eventually landing a high-paying position in a major company. I was able to buy a nice house, travel, and live comfortably, all things I never imagined I'd be able to do back when I was 16. I met a wonderful woman, now my wife, and we have two beautiful children together. For the first time in my life, I felt truly happy and at peace. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from my parents. It had been over a decade since they had kicked me out. Years of radio silence, during which they never once reached out to check on me or see how I was doing. They acted like I didn't exist. I had long come to terms with the fact that they had chosen Ethan over me, and I had built a new life without them. So to say I was surprised would be an understatement. When I answered the phone, my mother was on the other end. She sounded different. Not the stern, authoritative voice I remembered, but rather soft and almost desperate. She asked how I was, how life was treating me. I was guarded, unsure of why she was calling after all this time. Then she got to the point. She and my father were having financial difficulties. Ethan, as it turned out, was the real thief all along. He had been stealing from them for years, using the money for Dee and other bad habits. He had even confessed to them recently, admitting that he had lied about me to cover his tracks. My mother went on to say that Ethan's actions had drained their savings, and now my parents were on the verge of losing their home. They had heard about my success, about how well I was doing, and they were so proud of me. She said they always knew I had potential, and that it was wonderful to see me realize it. Then came the ask. They wanted me to help them financially, to repay them for raising me and giving me life. I was stunned. After all these years, after all the pain they caused me, they were asking for money? They had never believed me, never reached out, never apologized for kicking me out over Ethan's lies. And now, because they were in trouble, they suddenly wanted to reconnect? I told my mother I needed time to think and hung up the phone. My wife, who had been listening to my side of the conversation, asked me what happened, and I explained everything to her. She was furious. She couldn't believe the audacity of my parents. She knew how much I had suffered because of them, and how hard I worked to build a life from nothing. She said I didn't owe them anything, and that they had forfeited any right to my help when they abandoned me. But part of me felt conflicted. They were my parents after all. Despite everything, a small part of me still longed for their approval, their love. I spent a few sleepless nights wrestling with my thoughts, trying to decide what to do. Eventually, I decided that if I was going to make any decision, I needed to confront them in person. I wanted to hear their side, to see if they had truly changed, or if this was just a desperate attempt to get money. I arranged a meeting at a small cafe in my old hometown. When I arrived, I saw them sitting at a table, looking older and more worn than I remembered. My mother immediately stood up and tried to hug me, but I stepped back. I told them I was here to talk, not to pretend everything was fine. We sat down, and I asked them point blank why they never reached out, why they believed Ethan's lies without question, and why they were coming to me now after all these years. My father, usually the stoic one, looked uncomfortable. He said they had made a mistake, that they were misled by Ethan and didn't realize the extent of the damage their actions had caused. My mother chimed in, saying they were scared and didn't know how to fix things after they had kicked me out. I could feel my anger rising. I told them that their actions had nearly destroyed me, that I had been homeless, struggling to survive, while they chose to believe lies over their own son. They sat in silence, looking ashamed, but I couldn't tell if it was genuine or just because they were in a bind now. Then my father broke the silence. He said, "We're sorry for what happened, but we're in a difficult situation now. We really need your help, son." My mother nodded, her eyes pleading. They went on to explain how Ethan's thefts and irresponsible behavior had ruined them financially. They were in debt and at risk of losing their home, the same home they kicked me out of. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked them why they didn't ask Ethan for help, given that they had always favored him. My mother replied that Ethan wasn't in a position to help, and that they knew I was more responsible and successful now. I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat. I told them that it wasn't my responsibility to bail them out after they had abandoned me. I reminded them of how they had treated me, how they had left me to fend for myself, and how they never once reached out to apologize or make amends. They started to protest, but I cut them off. I told them I wasn't their backup plan, and that they couldn't just discard me and then come back when it was convenient for them. I stood up to leave, but then my mother grabbed my hand. She begged me to reconsider, saying they were old and they had nowhere else to turn. I could see the desperation in her eyes, but I also remembered all the nights I spent alone, scared, and unsure of my future because of their choices. I told them I needed time to think and walked out of the cafe. It's been a few weeks since that meeting, and I still haven't decided what to do. Part of me feels like I should help them. After all, they're still my parents. But another part of me feels like they don't deserve my help. They chose to believe lies over their own son. They kicked me out. And they never once tried to reach out or make things right until they needed something from me. I'm also angry at Ethan. He's never apologized, never admitted to the lies he spread that nearly ruined my life. I heard through the grapevine that he's still causing trouble, still making poor decisions, and dragging others down with him. I feel like helping my parents now would be enabling both their past actions and Ethan's current behavior. I've spoken to my wife about it, and she's firmly against giving them any money. She believes they made their bed, and now they have to lie in it. She thinks they only reached out because they see me as a financial safety net, not because they genuinely care about me or regret their actions. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for refusing to help my parents financially after they kicked me out as a teen over false accusations by my brother? OP's parents made a decision to believe his brother's lies and abandon OP when he needed them the most. They didn't bother to check on OP or see if OP was okay for years, and now they're only reaching out because they need money. OP doesn't owe them anything and needs to stand his ground. And now let's hear the community's opinion. I'm so sorry you had to go through this, OP. It's heartbreaking to see how much you've suffered because of your parents' favoritism and your brother's cruelty. You're not obligated to help them. If they genuinely wanted to make amends, they would have reached out long before they were in financial trouble. Do what's best for you and your family. Not the a-hole, but I understand why you feel conflicted. It's hard to completely turn your back on your parents, but remember how they turned their backs on you. If you decide to help them, make sure it's on your terms and set clear boundaries. Don't let them take advantage of you again. Honestly, it sounds like karma is finally catching up with them. They made their choices, and now they have to deal with the consequences. You've worked hard to get where you are, and you don't owe them a thing. Focus on your own family and your own happiness.
I've known my daughter-in-law since she was 14 years old. She started dating my son when he was 15, and they have stayed together through university, living across the country from one another, and now starting a life together. I'm going to be saying daughter-in-law. However, they are not married. The pregnancy was announced with so much excitement and was planned. I love my daughter-in-law as if she was my own daughter, and I have never once had a cross word to say about her. The baby came at the end of last month. Daughter-in-law and my son had requested months ahead that they don't have guests until the call is made. We all kept our word, and we were summoned to the hospital about 2 hours after the baby was born, and Mom and Dad had had their own time to welcome them to the world. We arrived at the same time as daughter-in-law's parents, and so allowed them to talk to the couple and be introduced to the child. When it was our turn, I fell in love with the child as soon as they were placed in my arms. Daughter-in-law and my son were looking as proud as anything, if a bit tired. I was passing the baby to my husband when daughter-in-law mentioned in a throwaway comment that of course I didn't put any effort into the birth of my children because they were just sucked out of me. So I wouldn't know how she was feeling right now. Here is your background. I have 2 children who are twins. Twins are never the easiest to deliver after the 9 months is over. We had decided months before that on the word of our doctors and for the safety of our babies, that they would be delivered via a cesarean section on a booked date. What actually happened was I went into labor 2 weeks early, and it was discovered that one of the babies, the one expected to be coming out first, was in breech. I was told in no uncertain terms that if I didn't have an emergency C-section, then I could lose both babies. I didn't even give it a second thought. I won't go into too many details, but when you're about to be put under a general anesthetic to save yourself and your babies, it is the scariest feeling in the world, and the most frightened I've ever been. We all pulled through. However, the babies were very, very small. To cut a long story short, they were taken to the NICU. I was bedbound while being told that it will be a tough 24 hours for the babies, and we couldn't start our home journey until a week after being brought in. That is why, when my daughter-in-law told me I put no effort into the birth of my children, that I had to excuse myself, because I was about to burst into tears. Daughter-in-law knows all about the trauma surrounding my children's birth. She asked me about what going through a C-section was like in case there was a problem and she had to go through one. She is not one of these people who posts on social media about how mothers who give birth via a cesarean are not real mothers. So for that to come out of her mouth, I was shocked. When I returned, my son apologized on my daughter-in-law's behalf, saying that she was exhausted and wasn't thinking straight. I accepted this and hoped to move on. Much like with the birth, daughter-in-law and my son had requested time alone with their newborn, and we would be told when we could visit. Again, we kept our word, and we were invited over a week later. I did my best to push what daughter-in-law had said to the back of my mind, and for the most part, we were all having a good day. That was until daughter-in-law started talking about how close she feels to the baby. She paused, and then asked me how close I felt to my children after giving birth. I said that they were a part of me, and so they would always be the closest things to me that I could ever imagine. She looked at me in a way I can only describe as if I had just told her that I had two heads. She said that she was not sure how that was possible, as I hadn't experienced childbirth. So, therefore, my children were not really a part of me, and were more like tumors that I had wanted removed. I was once again shocked and hurt. The baby, more by luck than judgment, needed to be put down for its nap, and so we were asked to leave. I have heard nothing from daughter-in-law or my son, and I am not at all expecting an apology from someone who really believes that I don't have any emotion to my children because I had a C-section. I have been trying so hard to just forget what was said and move on, but it hurts. I would have completely accepted the first instance just after the birth because she was tired and exhausted, but I can't move past the second time in their home. I know the immediate future after giving birth is hard, but daughter-in-law is acting like because I had a C-section, I excused myself from motherhood. I am keeping my distance, as per their initial request, but I am loathing to actually interact with daughter-in-law anymore following her comments. Should I try to reach out at a later, quieter date to voice how her words made me feel? The snarky side of me suggests to say, well, it was either C-section or let them die, so I chose my babies. On a less snarky note, maybe she had trouble bonding with her baby while it was in utero, and only after the birth was when she bonded, and she doesn't like admitting that. I am making a wild guess here, but I suspect that her birth was distressing for her, and she is jealous of what she sees as a much easier cesarean. Unfortunately, you're not going to get much out of her, for at least the next 6 months or so, due to hormones and exhaustion. Having said that, if she does make a comment like this again, it is perfectly okay for you to say to her, "That's really hurtful to me. I had a very difficult and traumatic birth." If you say this in a hurt tone, rather than an angry one, then she won't really have a leg to stand on. Quiet disappointment is the way to go. Like I said, I suspect that something really traumatic happened to her, and this is her way of processing it. It doesn't mean that she can get away with being unkind to you, though. My boyfriend, Aaron. His friend, John. His friend's wife, Deborah. Hello, I feel bad right now, and I want to know if I should be. My boyfriend, who I will be referring to as Aaron, is mad at something I said and wants an apology from me, but I don't regret what I said. Me and Aaron, 31 male, have been together for 4 years. He's a sweetheart and I love him. He has a best friend, 30 male, who I will be referring to as John, who is like a brother to him. Aaron and John have been friends since middle school and have went through a lot together, including alcoholism and a C addiction. Aaron is sober of both, but John is still a drinker, but sober from C. John is married to the woman, 34 female, he cheated on his 7-year girlfriend, 27 female, with. From here on, I will be referring to his wife as Deborah. His long-term girlfriend was pregnant with his baby at the time he met Deborah, and him and his girlfriend have a 7-year-old child together. He said that they had a one-night stand and she became pregnant, so he was stuck with her. My John has 4 children with 3 women. One of those women was his now wife, Deborah, who he impregnated when his long-term girlfriend was 3 months pregnant. He chose the other woman and married her 2 years later. He pays child support for 2 children. One sadly was conceived when he was 16 and was given up for adoption, and the other one is with Deborah. This never sat right with me, but I want to support my boyfriend who still wanted to be friends with him, so I'm still friendly to him. Aaron said he doesn't like John's life choices and have been telling him not to do the things he does, but John drunkenly does it anyway. Deborah was a coworker of mine that introduced me to Aaron. She cheated on her husband with my John and left the marriage for him. According to her ex, she cheated before and he gave her a chance, then cheated on him again with John. According to her, her husband cheated first, and she cheated in revenge, but fell in love. All of this bothers me, but it's not my life. I overheard John saying he'll never cheat on his wife because he actually loves her. Well, Deborah is a drinker and has been going out more often with her friends to drink while he stayed home with their child. She's been away longer and leaving to drink with her friends more often. John stopped drinking for a while and has been trying to stay sober to encourage his wife to do the same. She continued drinking, and I heard him voicing concern she was cheating on him. One night, a few days ago, John called me in hysterics, asking to talk to Aaron because his phone was dead. I asked him what's wrong, and he sobbed. She cheated on me. I gave the phone to my boyfriend. I heard the conversation because of how loud John was talking. He said he noticed mysterious transactions on their card while she was out and found a transaction to a hotel. He went to the hotel and sat in the lobby until she walked in hand with another man. He said he punched this guy and shook his wife before leaving. He was sobbing and shouting through the phone. Aaron listened and was quiet through all this. Then he finally said, "You know a cheater cheats, right?" John shouts, "But I've been nothing but faithful to her. I love her with all my heart," he sobs. I left the room because I couldn't feel sorry for him. He has monkey branched in every relationship he's been in. Deborah said it was once and she was drunk and that it meant nothing. Blah blah, trickle truth, blah blah, I love you, blah blah. You all know the cheater lies. John started drinking again and has been sleeping on our couch while Deborah called, texted, emailed him to come back home every day. A few days ago, Aaron was able to convince him to take a shower. Since D-Day, he has done zero self-care. We were talking about the situation, and I said, frankly, I don't really feel sorry for him. Now he knows what it's like to be cheated on. Aaron became aggravated and said, "No one deserves to be cheated on." He said that my reasoning was spiteful. I guess he's right, but I believe people end up sleeping in the bed that they made. John cheated on every girlfriend he's had. I remember him bragging about how many women he has impregnated. Aaron has been upset with me ever since. And I found out he told John what I said. This morning, John looked at me. Then he looked at the floor in shame. I felt like it was because of my statement. Should I apologize to Aaron and John for what I said? Thank you. Big oof. Way too much drama for me. You can't fix it. There's nothing wrong. Good luck. God, best friend and your boyfriend sound like a pill. Why did he share what you said to his friend? To cause more drama? Ugh. Sounds like a couple of gossiping hens. Yes, he did deserve it, to be fair, since he did all those things, and together with a toxic person, becoming an endless cycle. And your partner is right. No one deserves to be cheated on. But his best friend continues to do crappy things, resulting in crappy results. So the fool can deal with this crap on his own. To be honest, it's a joke.